I was able to add a new autographed Funko Pop to my signed Funko Pop collection. And like most signed items, this one kind of carries a little small story of its own. This was the second virtual signing I had participated in. The first was the Kevin Nash one, which if you look a few videos back, you'll see the Super Shredder that was signed. And then the Kevin Nash Chase Funko Pop was also signed live on Facebook. And that was all documented, and it was a really, great event. A lot of Q&A with fans, and it was a good time. So I was kind of expecting something similar with Scott Hall. The original date was pushed back, I think, a couple weeks. I sent this pop in quite a while ago, maybe end of August. We're now like in October, and I finally got it back signed, and I'm one of the few that got his pop signed from this virtual signing that took place. Scott Hall is an older wrestler. I think he's a little bit older than Kevin Nash, and he doesn't travel a lot because of COVID, as most people won't, and he's in that age range where it's kind of a hazard for him to travel around. So Dark Parlor Originals took their equipment, booked a hotel, and took flattened Funko boxes and other items to Scott Hall for him to sign. And they've been gathering and collecting all these items for some time in order to prepare for this event. So a lot of us were looking forward to it. And then when the day finally came, especially after the first, rescheduling, at first it looked like almost everything was gonna go well, normal, because he was just kind of like talking once the camera came on about how he was excited for when this COVID thing would finally be over, and he seemed kind of chill and ready to do this thing. I mean, he had his mask on, he had his some gloves on, and I'll add some photos here so you could see from the Facebook live stream. I didn't really capture too much video, and I didn't want to share any video because that goes along with the downside of this story. But let's take a look first at the pop. I requested it to be signed in gold Scott Hall. My goal one day is to get the Chase figure, swap it out with this box, and then also take the sticker from the Chase box once I can acquire one, and put it with this signature. Ideally, he was supposed to write on the side WWE Hall of Fame 2014. That did not happen. And here's the certificate of authenticity from Dark Parlor Originals, and it lets you know that this happened on October 10th. It's now October 26th, and I just got this back a couple days ago. But there were some issues in getting this signed. Scott Hall looked like he was a bit under the weather, and you can take that many ways. I don't know if he was medicated. I don't know if he was on other types of drugs, or if he was drunk or hungover, or what it was, but the guy was not in a mental state in order to sign a bunch of autographs, interact with fans, and do this Facebook Live thing. I think he tried to push himself to do it because he probably did care about not letting down fans, but it just did not work, because from the very beginning of this Facebook live stream, he looked kind of like, I wouldn't say annoyed, but little things were annoying him. Like, they got started an hour late, and I don't know if that was because they were trying to sober him up or what it was, but they gave him an hour extra to kind of prepare. They said it was quote unquote technical difficulties, but we know they were just buying time. And then imagine, like, if you schedule him for 4 hours and maybe you lost an hour. If you're the guy who is in charge of Dark Parlor Originals, you now have all these items to get signed, all these fans and customers that are going to be let down if their item's not signed, and you lost some time, so you're already rushing. So you're just putting these items in front of Scott Hall and asking him to sign. And I think at some point he kind of just felt like real rushed, and like this was all about the money, which it's not. Like, I mean, it is a business, but he's also trying to get through as many items as he can for his customers, and he knows kind of at what rate to work at. Like, if he's only signing one of these every 10, 15 minutes, not everybody's going to get the item signed. So we understood, he wasn't purposely trying to rush Scott Hall, but sometimes when you're just not in the mood or you're under the influence of something, things just tend to annoy you. And then some of the inscription that the customers wanted, he wasn't liking as much or didn't agree with. A lot of people were asking for Hall of Fame 2020. And as many of you wrestling followers know, with the COVID thing, the Hall of Fame got pushed back, or it didn't happen at all in 2020, at least not yet. So Scott Hall didn't really want to sign 2020, even though he was part of that class of 2020. So it's kind of a gray area if he was going to be 2020 or 2021, or were they going to push it back, or was it still technically going to be 2020? And his whole thing was like, hey, until I cross that stage and get that ring, it's not official. So he kind of was being difficult about signing WWE Hall of Fame 2020 for people, or 2014/2020. And Mike, the guy who owns Dark Parlor Originals, was kind of just trying to tell him, hey, this is kind of what the fan requested or wanted, or the customer wanted. I'm just kind of passing it along that, hey, could you please sign it this way? And Scott Hall was like kind of hesitant, like, I don't want to sign it that way kind of thing. And that kind of lagged in getting just one item signed. And you got to imagine a lot of people were probably asking for 2020 Hall of Fame inscription along with the 24, because 2014 he was inducted himself, and then 2020 was the New World Order with Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash. So little things like that were just throwing it off. And then I think the pace of everything, and they kept reminding him, hey, you're on live, watch what you say, because there was some cursing, which is typical Scott Hall. We don't mind that. We don't mind some of the horse playing, joking around. He has his own sense of humor, and those who've seen or heard Scott Hall talk know that that's just the way Scott Hall is. But then this kind of just seemed more of a kind of edging towards the area of disrespect for the host / owner of Dark Parlor Originals. I mean, there was a point where the owner, he comes in with his crew, small crew, his wife. I mean, it's very much a small business operation. So Scott Hall was making comments about how hot his wife was, how he didn't know how he scored such a hot wife, and kind of complimentary / maybe on the borderline of disrespectful. And he was kind of just also giving that guy a hard time, like, look at this dude, or this dude only cares about his cheddar, or this and that. And as us watching at home, it just kind of felt awkward, because we could feel the tense situation between Scott Hall and the owner of Dark Parlor, and we kind of just felt bad for Mike from Dark Parlor, because we're like, this is a difficult situation to be in. This guy, possibly under the influence, is not, he's not 100% there in order to, in the mood to make this a success. And then the other guy, he's worried about his customers / fans and making them all happy, because if a lot of us get back an item not the way we want it, or not our item not signed, we're not going to be happy. But then also he's concerned for the well-being of Scott Hall. Like, we don't know what's wrong with Scott Hall. We're really concerned and hoping he's not relapsing into drugs, for those who know the history of Scott Hall. And you're concerned for him as a person. And then us, as fans, customers, were worried for the exact same things. We're like, hey, what's wrong with Scott? We hope he does not, abusing substances again. And we were very much concerned for him too. And we also were expecting, a pretty good show like we had with Kevin Nash, and to get our items signed and to ask him questions and celebrate his career and all that stuff. And it wasn't happening. It was just really weird. It was kind of just watching these two interact in a very tense, weird situation. And I think Mike from Dark Parlor was trying to give it a bit of a chance, and at one point he just pulled the plug and said, hey, we're having a technical difficulties, and he ended the live stream. He deleted the live stream because he didn't want Scott Hall to look bad, because he cared about Scott Hall, his image and well-being. People seen the pictures, like a lot of wrestling sites have made a big deal about how there were stories about Scott Hall. One of his gloves only had one finger that was ripped, and I mean, and I don't know the details, but I mean, of why he was the way he was that day, and if he's maybe battling some demons, and if COVID-19 brought it back out. I mean, it's kind of a lonely time for a lot of people, and those who tour or look at, events with their fans and can't interact and their lives changed. It's not easy for everyone, and maybe he's going through a rough time, but we just wish the best for Scott Hall. And I mean, like I said, I'm kind of thankful I was able to get my item signed. A lot of people did not. It's not completely perfect. A lot of people, they had the signature kind of go into the box. This to me is not a big deal. Others had maybe sloppier inscriptions, or he messed up, I think, one Funko Pop, and that was one point where I think Mike was, hey, we'll have to redo this one again, and he kind of got upset. He didn't understand what he did wrong. And when you're under the influence sometimes of something, your patience for things is not as much. But that's kind of the story behind having this in my collection and getting this signed. It didn't go the way it was planned, but I'm still happy Scott Hall was able to sign this for me, and Dark Parlor Original was able to make it happen. And I'm not upset at them at all for missing out on the inscription or anything. They busted their butt. They invested so much money in going to Scott Hall. They had a custom artist customize a Scott Hall print that Scott Hall was supposed to sign. Scott Hall didn't sign any of those. So you gotta think, as a small business and as a fan of the business and as a fan of the guy, it was just kind of an unfortunate situation that none of that worked out the way it was supposed to. And it added another story just to this. But that's the story behind this Dark Parlor Originals virtual Facebook Live signing that happened but didn't really happen. At least I don't consider the 15-20 minutes we saw of them interacting, and him not really reading any comments. And he did get choked up and emotional when someone, I think, wrote on the comments, "We love you, Scott." And I think somebody repeated what was there to him, and he started to get teary-eyed and emotional, about how no matter what kind of has happened, people, he couldn't realize that people still love him out there. So, and I don't know if that has to do with also, when you drink, sometimes you get very emotional. So, you could tell he still cares about the fans that are rooting and supporting him. And we all know that addiction is no joke. Sometimes you don't have no control over it. You have to want to defeat it, but it's not easy. So we're with you there, Scott Hall. I don't think he'll be watching this, but we ain't mad at you. So that's the story behind this signed Funko Pop, which now will go up on my shelf with Nash and all my other wrestling pops.